Hi, I'm glad you're here. This is Jennifer McGuire, and today I am just creating for fun. I was kind of in a little funk. I know a lot of you get that way too and reach for crafting as a way to kind of pull yourself out, and that's what I did here. So I grabbed a handful of fun products and I created 3 very unique cards. I do have some tips and ideas to share with you on each of them, but really this is all about creating and having fun. Let's get started with this card, which has a really fun kind of tri-fold feature to it where you tuck the flap in under an element. Let's start out by looking at the completed card so you know the direction we're headed. I thought I might cheer myself up by making a bright, happy sunshine card, but you could make this with other products, maybe a flower in the middle. Really, it's a great universal design. I'm using the new Concord and 9th Happy Rays stamp set and the coordinating dies. I love the playful retro feel of this, a very unique style, and I hope they do more like this. Now in this stamp set, there is a turnabout stamp, which you can create fun backgrounds with. I'll demonstrate that in a moment. Notice that the die set can also be used alone. I will actually use that kind of faux stitch sunshine die on a later card. Now notice in here you have this large sunshine and hugs word, and there are coordinating dies for that. I really like that bold style, and I could see that using them on other cards too. Let's get started by doing the turnabout stamping for our background. Now the stamp set comes with this guide. That's the clear piece you see there with the X at the center. What you do for a turnabout is you line up the stamp itself with that guide. So you can see how the stamp image is lining up with the black printing on the guide. Next, I have my Turnabout Jig. This is the new one from Concord and 9th that has a little stick to it. I love it, but if you want to make your own Turnabout Jig, I will link to a video showing how up here on the top right. You're going to take the guide and line the X up on the guide with the white X on the jig. You can see how I'm lining up that X in the center. It's very easy to do. You will then hold those together, put the jig into the corner of your stamping tool. I'm using the MISTI. Then you will close the door on your MISTI, making sure the X's stay lined up. That will grab the stamp. You can take the guide off and save that for the next time you use the stamp. Now the stamp is set up to do the turnabout stamping. Doesn't take long at all. Now onto this jig, you can put any size piece of cardstock you want. I have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece, and I'm putting it in the center marks on that guide, but you could put it off center if you prefer. Now it's time to do the stamping. I'm using Concord and 9th Buttercup Yellow for my first stamped image. Now that's one of my favorite yellow colors. It's a beautiful true yellow. I also like that Concord and 9th dye inks are great to stamp multiple times without any bleeding. That way you can make the ink color darker or stay with the lighter shade. I decided to stamp it a few times just to make it a little more bold. Now I'll take the jig and I'll turn it 1 turn. See how I turned it 1 turn? And we'll repeat the stamping, but I'll change up the color. This time I'm using Butter Bar from Hero Arts. Do not be afraid to mix your different inks together. There's absolutely no reason to stick to one ink line. In fact, I think it's better to mix and match. That way you get more colors. You can see this one's a little bit darker, has a little bit of an orange to it. So it's building up this nice sun background. Now we can turn the jig again and stamp it with a 3rd color. This time I'm using Gina K Design's Sweet Corn Yellow, which is a nice soft yellow. By the way, this is a sun image, you can see, but you could definitely do this in different colors. Maybe put like a birthday cake in the center or a star, make it a celebration card. It doesn't have to be a sun. You could definitely use other colors to get different looks. I really like giving sunshine cards because I think of cards that I send as sunshine that comes out of an envelope for the recipient. So why not go with the sunshine theme? All right, I turned it to the final 4th position. This time I'm using a very soft yellow from Lawn Fawn. This is the butter color. It's like a nice cream color. And we will stamp that one. I'll stamp it twice just to make it show up a bit better. And there we have our fun background. Now to remove cardstock from a sticky mat, all I do is pull the sides back, which kind of pops the paper off the front, and it'll easily come off. I use a wet cloth just to wipe that excess ink away and let it dry, and my jig will be ready for later. All right, next let's create that cloud border along the bottom, which will actually be a flap that opens up. For this, I'm using an older die set from Hero Arts that has 2 cloud border dies in it, but you could use absolutely any cloud border dies you may have, or even hand cut your own cloud pattern. I'll cut this cloud from a folded piece of cardstock, so it'll be this flap that goes along the bottom of our card, and I want the top of the cloud to land right at the bottom of the face of the sun. I need a guide to help me get that just right. So I cut a piece of vellum to the same size, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I've lined it up on top of our stamping. That way I can see through our guide, the vellum, and line up the border die exactly where we want it and tape it onto the vellum. I will then run that through our die cut machine, and now I have this clear guide that will help me cut the flap just right. So just bear with me, it'll make sense in a moment. Next, I have a note card that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I'm holding it upside down. Right along the bottom there where the crease is, I am holding the piece of vellum, that's our guide, and I'm putting the die right up against that vellum. So I'm just popping it right up against the vellum guide. I will then tape the die in place onto our note card. We'll open up our note card. Remember, it's upside down. Make sure it's upside down at this point. We'll open it up and run it through our die cut machine. So that vellum piece was simply a guide to make sure I cut this border exactly where I wanted it. Vellum is a great tool to have in the craft room. Now we need another white note card, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I'll glue our stamped sun background directly onto it. So this will be kind of a tri-fold card by putting 2 cards together. Now I will open up the card with the stamping on the front and put adhesive on the inside, as you see me doing here. Then I will take this other piece and lay it right inside. So it should line up very nicely there, no problems at all. And we have that cloud border flap kind of sticking out the bottom. So now we can close the card closed and fold the border up, and it'll line up nicely. I didn't like that little bit of cloud sticking out over there, so I just took my scissors and trimmed it off. By the way, you could do this same card design, but instead of a cloud border, maybe do grass and have a little critter in the center or a flower or something. You can change it up easily. But I'm using the sunshine faces from that Happy Rays die set from Concord and 9th. I cut a solid circle from an orange and then the face from yellow, and I glued those together using Gina K Ink liquid adhesive. I also cut 2 little circles of a lighter yellow cardstock to add as cheeks on the sun. If you'd rather stamp the face, you could definitely stamp it and then add that to the center. All right, now I'm using my Stardust glitter pen to add some lines of sparkle to the rays. I'm using my T-ruler and just going back and forth slowly with the pen to put down glitter lines. Once I've done this, I go back and I put another layer right on top to add more sparkle. This will be very subtle, especially in the video, but it will give us some sparkle that will catch the light nicely and the recipient will notice. Next, I'll put some foam squares at the top half of that circle on our card, that circle opening where our sun face will go. I'm only putting the adhesive on the top half because we don't want the bottom half to be adhered. That way our clouds can get tucked under the sun face. So I'll place my sun right on there, and now you can see how that cloud border can be tucked underneath it. Now you don't have to tuck it under there. You could just have it close in front of it, totally up to you. But I think this is a fun way to kind of close this tri-fold card. I did cut another border piece, and I am gluing that right along the bottom just to kind of give a layered look to those clouds. You could skip that if you wanted to. By the way, that sun die cut, I layered a few die cuts thick so it's strong enough that even though it's going on those 3 little foam squares, it won't get squished in the mail. I stamped sunshine with black ink and then used the coordinating die to cut it out. I then chose this Concord and 9th Big on You stamp set. There's a greeting that says sending hugs. I'm going to stamp just the word sending here above the word sunshine. There is a sending greeting in the Happy Rays stamp set, but it has a little arch to it, and I just wanted something that would just fit nicely here above the word sun on my card. So I think it's fun sometimes to mix and match sets together so you can change the look. I did put a little bit of that Stardust glitter pen on the cheeks, so they're sparkly too. And I added some peach colored hearts from the same die set. Here you can see how the card opens and the clouds tuck nicely under the sun in the center. Looking closely, you can see the Stardust glitter pen just added a little bit of sparkle to those rays, but you could also use something more bold like a gold gel pen if you prefer. You can also see the glitter sparkle on the cheeks on our sun. So this is a fun way to take different supplies, use them together to create a trifold card with a little feature that tucks it closed. I really enjoyed making this one, and I plan to do the same card design but with a star in the center, maybe some blues coming out from it for a birthday or congratulations theme. All right, let's move on to a completely different looking card. This is a pretty simple one, but I wanted to show you a fun way to get blended ink on a featured image. This is the Concord and 9th Eclectic Blooms stamp set. I really like the So Kind of You sentiment. And the coordinating die set includes the die to cut that sentiment out. It also has a floral image and die, and the die set includes these, the word friend, thanks, and hello, along with the shadow dies. Now, I off-screen die cut a bunch of these so I could have them ready to go because I really like the size and style. Later, I'll glue these together and have them ready so whenever I need to add them to a card, I can. I'm not using these words on this card, but I will use the hello on my next card. I have my jig here that has that stickiness to it, and I'm using that to hold my cardstock down in the corner of my MISTI stamping tool, and I'll explain why in a moment. I also use magnets to hold it in place. You could use any sticky mat, just wanted to show you the jig can be used just for this simple stamping too. I have Concord and 9th Buttercup ink, and I'm using a blending brush to apply that ink towards the center of my stamp. Really, I'm covering quite a bit of the center, and you'll see why in a moment. Now, I do this a few times because I'm not bringing the ink pad directly to the stamp, but instead using that brush. So I'm not getting a ton of ink each time. So it's best to build up the color, making it darker, by doing multiple times. Now, after I have done the yellow, and you can see I went a little past center, I'll come in with honeysuckle at the top. This is a great peach color. And when I ink up my stamp with the brush, notice that I'm going past the word so. I'm going all the way down to overlap with that yellow a little bit. Where that honeysuckle overlaps with the buttercup, we'll get an orange color. So it looks like we used an orange ink, but we really didn't. And because we're using a blending brush to ink up our stamp, we get a nice smooth transition from that pink to that orange to the yellow. Now along the bottom of the stamp, I'll use Aqua Sky, one of my favorite colors from Concord and 9th. Again, I'll make sure that I go past the bottom of the stamp, kind of up towards the bottom of the word of. That way that blue overlaps with the yellow, making it look like we used green. Now the reason, by the way, that I used a sticky mat to hold my paper down there is because sometimes when you stamp with a stamp but it's not completely covered with ink, the stamp wants to stick to the paper and move it. So using the sticky mat held it in place. And look at that beautiful blending. It looked like I used 5 colors, but I really only used the pink, yellow, and blue. I'll use the coordinating die to cut this out, and I'll use the coordinating die to cut 2 more. And glue it right behind the stamped die cut for some dimension. Now I have this faux stitch sun that's in that Happy Rays die set that I showed you earlier. And I'm die cutting it from the bottom right of this white cardstock piece, and you can see the fun pattern that it adds. That white piece is cut to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. I also created a note card from Aqua Sky Concord and 9th cardstock. Love that color. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And that bottom right corner, I'm putting down quite a bit of this tape runner so that there's lots of adhesive there. Then I'll place my white cardstock on top of that. And notice where all of those holes are, it has exposed adhesive because I put so much adhesive on that blue cardstock behind it. That way I can inlay little die cut circles into those openings and they'll stick nicely. So I used the same sunshine die and cut from this holographic glitter cardstock from Erin Lee Creative, and I'm popping out those little circles. These little circles I'll pick up and put into the openings on our white die cut. And because there's adhesive behind it, it'll stick right in place. So this is a die cut inlay technique. It takes about 5 minutes to put all these little dots in, but it's a great way to add sparkle without adding bulk. If you wanted to, you could instead put the silver cardstock behind it and it'll show through the holes, but this gives a nice smooth look. You could also use gems there if you wanted to. I'm then putting liquid adhesive on the back of our stacked die cut and add that right at the center. Since this is a simple card design, I thought it'd be fun to add some interest to the envelope. So I have a white A2 envelope and I'm putting tape along the folded line of the flap. I'll apply ink, the same colors that I used on the stamped image, onto the flap. Notice I put a lot of yellow at that center. I go beyond the center points. Then I put the honeysuckle on one side overlapping with some of the yellow to create that orange. And then on the other side, I use the aqua sky overlapping with that yellow to make that green. So now we have the same blended look on our envelope to match the blended stamping that we did. I always try to make my envelope match my card. It just makes it a little more special. We spend so much time on our cards, we might as well put them in something nice. Now here's a closer look at that inlay where we put those tiny little silver die cuts into the openings on our white background. I just love that look. And you can see that inking that we did for this stamped image where we get that nice blend of color from pink to blue. This technique of using a blending brush and ink to ink up your stamp with different colors can be done with any kind of solid image. All right, now for a completely different card, this is actually a pop-up shop card. Concord and Ninth does a great job with their dies, really well thought out, and this one is definitely a favorite. I had a lot of fun making this, and there are so many different ways you can use these dies to get different looks. I think it's best if we start by looking at the completed card so you know the direction we're headed. The card flattens nicely to fit into a regular envelope, and when you take it out, it pops up to have this fun dimension. The best part about this is all the different ways you can decorate it. Now you can keep this very simple if you want, or go over the top, and I fall somewhere in between with this card, but they're so much fun to put together. This is the Concord and Ninth Pop-Up Shop Base Die Set. This has everything you need to create that pop-up card that you see there on the left. I cut that from their packaging. There are many ways you can use these dies together or separately. You can also use other dies you have along with it. Maybe some little birthday balloons. You could decorate this with balloons. I mean, there are so many ways you can get more from your other products in combination with this, and I'll demonstrate a little bit of that. Now, I will say that I changed up the roof when I put mine together. Just want you to notice that this is how it's designed to be done, the roof there with flowers up there or that fun decorative trim. But I'm going to change it up just to show you can get creative with it. There are some add-on stamp sets and die sets available to go with it. I didn't actually use these today except for one stamp. This is the Concord and Ninth Bake Shop. So it has a stamp set with lots of baking sentiments or sweet, like for a sweet friend sentiments. And look at these little dies. You can make shelves that go in the window of the shop where you can put these little pastries. Look at these baskets with the little details. There's pretzels. There's little cupcake holders and icing for the cupcakes. Super cute. There's also the bookshop add-on. There's a stamp set and coordinating dies. But keep in mind, these dies and stamps could be used on flat cards too. See, there's a shelf over there with the ladder, the books, the cat, the lamps, the plant. So you could definitely use these with or without the pop-up shop. Now, I actually didn't use any of these dies either. I just used the Miss You sentiment from the stamp set. I just wanted to show you can do a lot with just the base die set alone. Let's get started with this example. I'm starting with this large die here. This funny looking die creates the front of our shop. There's openings for the windows. I cut it twice from Concord and Ninth Dove cardstock. From one of them, I'm cutting along the inside score lines, and I'm gluing this to the front of our house just to give it some stability. You do not need to do this, by the way, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. Now on the other one, I'm scoring along the two score lines on each side. Both of them I'm scoring back. So I will just fold along the score lines that the die makes and use my bone folder to reinforce them. So this is the pop-up shop that goes on the front of your card. By the way, this will create a card that is A2. It'll be 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Now that other piece that I trimmed down, I'm gluing onto the front. Again, you don't need to do this, but it gives it more stability. You could also stamp on this piece, stencil on it, whatever you want to decorate the front. Now would be the time to do that, but I left mine plain. All right, so now I have that glued just right there on the front of it, nice and strong. Now it's time to start decorating. There are lots of dies in this die set to be used in different ways. I'm going to show you some ways, but keep in mind Concord and 9th always has a video on their product page showing you how to use them, so you can check that out too. Here I'm using the door dies to create door from Aqua Sky cardstock and a little planter. I created that from white cardstock. Notice how I can create like the molding details by gluing these die cuts together. So this little piece right here again will be a little white planter that will go underneath the window. For the door, I wanted some dimension to it, so I cut it twice from Aqua Sky and I'll glue that together. Then we have the molding detail. I think that's what you call it, maybe not. I don't know what it's called, but the detail to add to the door, and I'll glue that right on top of it. I'm using liquid adhesive because it's definitely a time saver. I'll just put something heavy on top of it while it dries. Now I can glue the door onto the front of my shop in that solid space there. You could put the door on this way or upside down for a different look. Next, I want some window in those openings. So I have flipped that card front over and I'm putting double-sided tape around the windows. I've also cut a piece of acetate. Any kind of acetate or clear packaging will work here. And I've cut it to be smaller than our card front here, and I'm laying it right on top of that double-sided tape. This way, there'll be kind of a glass look to those window openings, but it also gives you some stability and strength to your card front. So if you choose to skip putting this acetate in here, I would definitely put that added piece of gray that I did earlier. But if you're doing that acetate on the window, you don't need that added piece that I put on the front before. All right, now on to that acetate. I'm gluing these little window details. Again, these dies are all included in the base die set. Another fun idea here, you could white heat emboss a sentiment on that window or gold heat emboss. Just make sure you use a heat resistant acetate, and I'll link to the one that I like below. I decided not to stamp on my window, but I did want to mention that as an option. Now I have the little white planter that I want to put underneath the window. For me, this is kind of the focal point of this card. I want lots of color and interest here, so that's where I'm going to spend my time. I'm going to fill this up with lots of flowers. If you know me, you know that I love flower pots and planters. I have lots of them around my house. I much prefer to plant in pots instead of the ground, and so I'm going to mimic that here on my card. This is the Concord and 9th Petal Pusher die set. I've used this before in a video. I'll link to it up here on the top right. There are some great coordinating stencils to go with it. But what I'm using from here are these small little flower dies and little leaf dies. Again, I like to combine products together to get more use from them. So I'm taking those small flower and leaf dies and I'll use those in my planter on my card. Keep in mind that the Card Shop base die set does come with this little green foliage and tiny little flower die cuts. You could use that alone. I wanted to make it more full and add more to it. So I'm using some of these extra die cuts that I got from that other die set. Again, using combinations of different products together gives you fun new looks. So I'm just layering little die cuts here, cutting them smaller, tearing them and gluing them together until I have this full planter. I used 2 different colors of green, by the way, to add more interest. Now I have these tiny little flowers that I cut from Buttercup and honeysuckle cardstock, and I'm gluing those in place too. I do recommend using a pickup stick like this little tool here that has a wax tip. It's very helpful in picking up the little die cuts and adding them to your glue very easily. Now I can glue the planter right below the window, making sure it lines up with the bottom of the door there. So it's lining up with the first score line that we have on that gray piece. The Shoppe base die set also includes a table and chairs and a light fixture. It really includes a lot. I think they do a great job stuffing it full with lots of different options to create different cards. Here I'm gluing the little light fixture to hang from the back of the window and decided to put 2 there. You could get creative and have them hanging farther back, but I'm just putting them directly up against the back of the window. To adhere them, I'm using double-sided tape, but I won't remove the release paper, so I'm really just using it as tape to hold it there. I know this is strong, so it'll stay put nicely. All right, now we'll flip this back over and add our table and chairs right in front of the planter. I want to make sure that this stays put, so I'm using a strong liquid adhesive. This is Gina K Ink. And the table and chair die cuts, I die cut 3 times and glued together so they're nice and strong. That way, when it's in the mail up against that planter, it doesn't get squished or creased. It's strong enough that it'll stay looking nice. All right, now we can put our card together, but I do want to mention, if you want anything showing through the window on your card, maybe you want stamping in there to look like wallpaper, or you want a shelf with books on it, stamp sentiment, anything. If you want anything in there to show through the window, you want to do that now. You want to do your stamping and gluing onto the front of your note card now before you add the front of the Shoppe. I'm leaving it plain there in the center, so I'm not going to add anything. So I just have a plain white note card, top folding, that is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Along the bottom flap of our storefront, I am putting strong liquid adhesive. You could use strong double-sided tape here, something strong. I'll fold it over and put that fold line along the bottom edge of our card. So I'll really press that down, making sure that little fold line on the gray lines up with the bottom of our note card. All right, so I'm going to hold this up so you can see better. I'll really press that in place. Make sure that it is adhered well there. All right, so it looks funny now, but here is how to finish it off. It's very easy to do. You have that other flap at the top. We're going to put that same strong adhesive along that flap. I often refer to this type of adhesive as best friend adhesive because it's one that you can count on and trust. All right, so to close this so that it has the pop-up feature, you need to take the bottom of the card and press it down. So see how the edge of the door is pressed down to the table. You then take the adhesive that you put on that little flap, fold that over, and press down onto the note card. Make sure that is secured nicely, and you'll see how the front of the store pops up. And this will flatten and fit into a regular envelope. I'll show you in a moment. Notice how the front pops up and the card stands nicely on display. It'd be fun to do a village of these to give to someone, or even do another pop-up on the other side of the card so that there's something on both sides. All right, so now let's add a roof to this. Remember how I said that I'm doing my roof different than the die set is intended to be used? I just wanted to show you a way to change it up. You can do how they intended. They have a video over on the Concord and 9th website. I'm going to change it up. I figure if you're going to invest in a die set, you should have many ways to use it. All right, so I've cut a piece of Concord and 9th mushroom cardstock to be 4 1/4 by 2 inches. I'm scoring at 1/2 inch and at 1.5 inches. This is going to form a pop-up roof to put on top of our store. So that's 2 inches tall, 4 1/4 inches wide. I score it at 1/2 inch and 1.5 inches. And I'll reinforce those fold lines using my bone folder. I did use one of the roof dies included in the die set to create this little decorative edge, and I'm gluing that along the bottom edge of one of the flaps on that piece that we just scored. I just thought that would be fun having hanging off the bottom of our roof edge just to add detail. I also cut one of the white strip pieces, the dies included in the set, and I put that right along the top of the trim. Again, this is just decorative. You can skip it if you want to. All right, now on the top of our note card, we have this white that's exposed. I put some strong adhesive on it, and I'm putting the other flap on our gray piece right up against it. That way the roof will stick out from the top of our card. So I'll show you here from the side. You can see how it sticks out up there. Very simple roof that you can add, and now the roof pops up along with the Shoppe front. It'd be fun to put little streamers on the roof edge for a birthday card or hang a wreath on the door. You can change this up for so many different occasions. I originally thought I was going to put the hugs right along the window, but it was a little bit too big and bold on the card. So instead, I used the Hello die cut from the floral stamp set that I showed you earlier. I cut that from black cardstock and glued it right onto the door. A final detail to add to this is a little sign that will stick out the front of our shop. I'm again using my jig because it's sticky and it can hold my little sign in place as I stamp on it. These dies that I use to create the sign are included in the base die set for the shop. I'm stamping Miss You on one side of the sign, and that Miss You is, I think, from the book add-on stamp set that I showed you earlier, but you could stamp whatever you want there. On the other side, I glued a small little heart die cut that I have in this bowl of miscellaneous junk that I often reach for as little accents for my cards. I guess I shouldn't call it junk. They're little treasures, right? And I hope I'm not the only one with a little treasure bowl like this of little things I can't part with. There's a little flap on the sign. I put some strong adhesive on that, and I'll press that flap up against the storefront. You can put it anywhere that you want. I thought this was a good spot here. And now that little sign will pop up too when you take it out of an envelope. Oh, and I forgot to mention I put a little gold gemstone for a handle on the door, but the die set actually includes handle options too if you want to die cut instead. So you can see how this card design you could change up in so many ways for so many different themes, and you can add things on the inside. Now for mailing this, you could put it in different size envelopes. This is an A6, which is a little bit big for it, but that way if you want some things kind of sticking off the card a bit, you would have that wiggle room. I often use A6 envelopes so that I have that wiggle room. However, I did want to show you this will fit into a regular A2 envelope just fine. I push the shop up towards the top of the card, then I push the roof down on top of it, flatten the little sign, put it in the envelope, and it'll fit just fine. When you take it out of the envelope, everything will pop up and it'll sit nicely on display. So you do have different options for how you mail or give this to someone. I just recommend having some of those bigger A6 envelopes for cards that have a lot going on, so there's some wiggle room if you want it. Here's a closer look at the focal point of it, that little planter. That's what I really wanted to kind of draw the attention. I think I may go back and add a little die cut dog or cat into the window too, just so there's something there. Remember, you could stamp or decorate however you want inside of the window too. You just do it on the card front. All right, there you have it. 3 very different cards for you today that got me out of a little bit of funk, and I hope it does the same for you. I hope you are having a good day. Holidays can be really hard for many different reasons, so got to send a little sunshine out there when we can. If you're interested in these products, I have them linked below in my YouTube description, and I linked to a couple other videos here that you can check out if you want more inspiration. Thanks for spending this time with me, and have a wonderful week.